Hi, everyone, again. Sorry for those brief technical difficulties, but we should be able to get to board one momentarily. Uh, in the meantime, we'll continue talking about the field and such. Feel free to ask us questions in the chat. As a reminder, this is the 2022 uh, Scrabble Players Championship live stream presented by Scrabble Go. And Matt, at this point, right before game one of a tournament, like a nationals, do you have specific things going through your mind, or are you just kind of ready to play at that point?
Oh my goodness. There is no experience like a nationals. I've been playing these tournaments since I was 12 years old. Really, what I'm trying to do on day one is I am always just sick to my stomach. I'm so nervous, so excited, so giddy, so scared. I'm lucky if I'm able to get breakfast down that first day. And once we shake that tile bag for game one, man, there's no experience like it.
Yeah, and so we can now see Eric's and Will's faces on camera. They're looking ready to play Scrabble, masked up, and we can see the board view as well. The other things you'll be able to see on your screen are tile racks. They haven't drawn tiles yet, so but you'll soon see hopefully 7 tiles from each populated there. And then the timers will start running down from 25 minutes soon, and also the scores will be updated accordingly. So if you have any questions about anything going on stream, just tell us in chat. Hopefully, either us or a responsive, knowledgeable viewer will be able to help out. But yeah, to go back to what Matt was saying, right now, right before game one, that's kind of when the most anxiety hits for me too. It's just, it feels like the possibilities are unlimited. You could have an incredible tournament, you could win, you could lose, and it feels like so much hinges on whatever you draw first right away to set your mood and just general attitude for the tournament. Even though a long enough tournament, if you have a bad game one, you can grind out 30 great games after that and easily come back. But I definitely relate to it feeling so pivotal at the beginning of a tournament.
It really can set the tone. And in 31 games, it's such a long tournament. Any one game doesn't make a difference, and yet every single game makes a difference. I know one year at the Buffalo Nationals, I had an absolute drubbing of a game to Ori Swift. I think I lost by almost 300 points. I got tripled on, and I just never recovered from it that tournament. So, I think everybody wants to at least have a decent game round one. They don't want to fall too far behind.
Yeah, and so letters have now been drawn by Eric. Will is now drawing letters as well, and so uh, it looks like he has great letters. These are the kinds of letters that would really calm me down at the beginning of a tournament. ACEEKRS. Matt, do you go with something like Creek? Do you go shorter? What's your plan of action here?
Oh man, that K was the last tile he turned over, and that's a killer. That previous 6 tile rack of crease looked so promising, and I don't think he's got a bonus with the K on there. I think in this case you've got to play Creek. There's just a lot of points that can be scored. A 5-letter word obviously is going to extend that K all the way to the double letter square. Um, I see re-cakes in the chat. I would challenge that. But yeah, I think Creek is probably what you've got to do here. That'd be
Yeah, I
Creek with
mean,
an
would you exchange the K if you feel that, or KE if you feel that good about crease or cares as a leave?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Creek is still going to score you 32 points. You can't pass that up just to give yourself a good shot at a bingo. You can see he's even set up recakes. Can we make sure that Eric doesn't see the chat going right now? Because, nah, just kidding. I'm just messing with y'all. I think Creek is kind of the no-brainer play here. Eric, especially being on stream, is probably going to take a little bit more time to make sure he's not missing a 7-letter bingo. But here he comes. He is eventually going to play Creek. 32 points for Eric. I totally agree with that play. I think Morris is on board as well. Right, Morris?
Yeah, totally on board there. And we've definitely been throwing some terms like bingo bonus. All that means is using all 7 of your tiles in one go, and you get 50 extra points for that. So if you hear bingo or bonus, that's what we're referring to. And that's a huge part of the game just because 50 points can add so much to your score. So you scored 32 there. Imagine if you could have scored 82 instead. It really more than doubles your score on turns where you get it. And so uh, Eric also drew the blank, so he'll likely get a bingo next turn. But right now we're turning to Will, whose letters aren't quite as synergistic as what we've been seeing from Eric.
Will does have the extension to make Creek into Creakier, which is probably one of the reservations Eric had about making that play. But we don't like that. It holds UV together, which is just some incredible anti-synergy, terrible letters to have together. I think Will's probably going to end up playing Vihuela, or however you say that word, Vihuela, down to the A. That's what I would do. Just get rid of all of that garbage at once. What are you thinking about here, Morris?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the idea. Vihuela, I think that's like Spanish kind of guitar, if I remember correctly. And so, yeah, it just dumps a lot of the clunk from that rack that you don't want. It just accomplishes a lot of your objectives you want all at once. I mean, on any turn, I like to think about it as it's a combo of how many points I score, how many points my opponent can get from that play, and what letters I leave, so I can score well, hopefully, the next turn. So scoring well this turn, leaving good enough letters next turn, both of those are accomplished at a minimum with Vihuela.
So it's going to be Eric's turn now. He's probably looking for bingos down from the C. That would probably be the best scoring option he can find. I'm not currently seeing one from the C. I think we can do smirched through the C. And there's also a number of 7-letter bingos I think he can make out of this rack. The one that pops into my head is Mendes, which I'm not going to try to spell it because I'm going to get it wrong.
And the NDHIS, I believe, is what Matt's talking about. But I mean, Creeks as a hook is pretty good here for bingos. If you can do an SH bingo like Shimmed, I think should be valid. That will be a lot of points. It should be over 90 if I'm looking at it right.
Yeah, shimmed. If shimmed is valid, shimmed is going to be a ton of points. But Eric knows that Will knows if shimmed is a word. I'm not sure where Eric is on word knowledge after a 10-year hiatus. So that's going to be tough for him to pull the trigger on. But he'll certainly find some kind of bingo out of this rack. Shimmed, I think, is going to be his best option. Let's get some support from chat, too. What kind of things are y'all seeing?
Yeah. Misheld is another word that's even more common than shimmed or Mendes if he can see that. Or sorry, not misheld, disheld. I always mix that up. So maybe he won't see that then. And then there should be other things. Whimsied, I think, is good if through the I in Vihuela. It should also be an option. So there are definitely things available, and I would take a lot of time here too if I were Eric, just because a blank opens up so many more possibilities.
If you're Eric here, you can use this turn definitely to shape the board to a way you want. If you bingo down, making a word ending in S, making creeks, you've already effectively killed a good chunk of the board. It's going to be tough for Will to open it up without bingoing down from the C. Whereas you also have options like something like ditheism through the I in Vihuela. That would open the board quite a bit. And so it'll be interesting to see what he's trying to do. It's a mix of what word knowledge he's got and how confident he is in a word like shimmed, how much he wants to score, and what he wants to do to the board. What would you want to do with the board here, Morris? You're obviously the underdog playing against one of the best players on the planet, but you're the overdog at the same time, holding a blank and about to score 80 to 90 points.
Yeah, so you'd have to know that Will's strength is his word knowledge in bingos. That's a big reason why Will has won a nationals, has just put up such great results, and is the highest rated player in the tournament. So if I'm going to be up by a pretty solid lead, if I can score a 90-point bingo here, which is definitely possible with these letters, I think first make sure it scores enough to be more than a classic like 70-point bingo up. So if I can get a 90-point bingo, I would put those categories in a much or those plays in a much higher category than the 70-point ones. And then yeah, I would try to play a bit more closed here. So Shim definitely I think would accomplish more of those objectives just because I want to give Will as few opportunities as he can to claw back in this or force him to sacrifice points to create his own options. So, whenever I'm forcing my opponent to do something instead of giving them the option to do something, that's always preferred, in my view.
So to me, it looks like Eric is pulling the trigger on Shimmed. Yeah, the blank designation, he's circled an M. So great play by Eric. Nice find, good confidence in a pretty low probability word as well. He's just, to me, definitely the best play he could make here. And great job. It's going to be almost 100 points. And that's going to put Will in a bad place as you look at his rack full of clunky consonants.
Yeah, I mean, great find by Eric, and especially on stream, those sorts of words, you start to doubt yourself so quickly. It just the pressure of not phoning on stream cannot be understated for so many people. So Eric is definitely in a good headspace too, likely if he can both find Shimmed and pull the trigger on it on a live stream.
I will say there is no way I would have made that play. So mad kudos to Eric. Come off a 10-year hiatus and come on stream and drop that. That's some really great stuff. Someone in chat mentioned he's been playing a lot on Woogles. Woogles is an online client to play some word games, and it seems like he's been shaking off the rust over there. But nice play by Eric. And you can see Will is probably less than thrilled right now to be down 100 points. With a rack that's not super great.
Yeah. Luckily, he's probably choosing between two plays of Fatty or Waddy off of the D and Shim that Eric gave him that are both 42 points. It really depends on if you prefer an F or a W in this sort of situation. And I think he's sort of assessing which of those two letters seems more valuable in his spot right now.
Yeah, the W is one of the worst tiles in Scrabble, so Will's definitely going to opt to get rid of that one when he can. Nice, solid score back. Will is opening up a triple word square, but he has no choice but to do that. Waddy scores so many points. It clears his rack of a lot of that garbage. And fortunately for Will, Eric is not going to be able to come back and hit that spot very hard because he has pulled a pretty ugly rack.
Yeah, I know people in the chat were pointing out some good, with an A, some good words to clean out some of those letters, but the A that Will put on the board doesn't really give Eric ideal scoring chances for that, so he's likely to go a different route here.
Yeah, this is going to be tough. I mean, Eric's not got very good options. He's definitely thinking, how do I unclutter this rack? How do I get rid of some of this dreck? And you're not going to be able to get rid of all those bad letters at once. Two O's, a Y, a G, a U, all at the same time. Not a good place to be in. But, he's seeing some words. Yogi is an option. You can play goo or something if he really wants to address the triple word square. What are you thinking here, Morris? What do you see for Eric?
I'm wondering, so he had Oi and Yo at separate points, so he could play Oi for 20 points below the Y and Waddy making Yo as well. He could also, he had Yo first. I'm wondering if he's considering going super defensive and playing AY, Do, and Yo directly below the A and the D and Waddy. And the reason why that's more defensive is the triple lane that Will created starting or ending with the W, that allows for 7-letter words, just a lot more variants of types of words Will could get. And so I think he might be going super defensive. He has Yo set up right now.
It'll be interesting. This is a big philosophical decision on what kind of game you want to play. There are a lot of words that start with the letter C. The thickest section of the dictionary starts with the letter S. The second thickest section of the dictionary is the chapter of behind the letter C. So you have to be concerned about Will playing an 8-letter word down from the C in Creeks as well. And I'd really like to make that spot go away with a 100-point lead against a solid player like Will. It's really only a 60-point lead at this point. Will's the score widget's not quite updated after Will's most recent play of Waddy, so we'll focus on getting that fixed. This will be an interesting turn for sure. I know very little about Eric as a player, how he tends to opt in terms of strategy, what his strengths and weaknesses are. But so far, I've seen two very solid plays from him. We'll see what he does here.
Yeah, and these sorts of plays, Creek is definitely, I think, the standard that most experts would play. Shimmed, if you know it and see it, also would be kind of the gold standard play. This is a turn where I think, even among experts, there would be a lot of discussion of what the right objective is in general, and what sort of play would you favor. There's a lot of stylistic differences, I think, between even 21, 2000 level players. Not that one plays better or worse necessarily. It's just different preferences for how you approach these situations. So Eric goes very conservative here. There are some extensions to Oi. So I don't actually know many 9-letter words, but like cowboy, for instance, would be a really fun extension for Oi. Will is super up on those sorts of finds, so it'd be funny if he finds something like that later on in the game to try to open that side of the board.
Incredibly, Eric holds what I thought was a not great leave as Gious, and he pulled a bingo anyway. He ended up drawing bougies or boogies. I don't know how you pronounce that word, but wow, he got bailed out pretty hard by the tiles, and it has to be happy about that, even though it doesn't currently play. Oh wow. Okay, so Will's gonna come down with Frump and score a bunch of points, and
give him a bingo spot.
Yeah, and give him a spot to play bougies and frumps on a triple word for what's going to be nearly 100 points again. So we'll see if Eric. I think that word might have been added since 2012. I'm not totally sure on that, but we'll see. Oh, he's going straight to it. He's got to be shaking in his boots with excitement about that spot that Will just opened up. And I'm not for 1 second insinuating that Will made a bad play by playing frump. You have to take some risks and some chances in Scrabble. You can't be paranoid about what your opponent might have, especially if you're playing while your opponent is leading. So Eric hasn't pulled the trigger on this yet, and that makes me wonder.
There he
goes.
is.
There he goes. Okay. So yeah, you can see Will is not thrilled by that S, and definitely not thrilled by the bingo now.
Yeah.
But that's hopefully we can get the score widget updated soon. But by my count, it's about 150-point lead now for Eric.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Eric has easily over 200 points by now, getting 2 pretty high point bingos. And one thing I didn't realize at first is there was another spot for the S. Screek is a word as well. So there will be another S lane. We don't really know if Eric has seen that. I'm guessing Will has seen that, but yeah, it will be interesting to see if later on this game if that is a key board vision part of the game that will allow someone to win. But Will actually, I think, has bingos of his own now that he has drawn the blank. I see Rabietic through the I in Vihuela, for instance. And
yeah,
I don't...
Go ahead, Morris.
Oh, I was going to say, and another option is Carboy. I said Cowboy earlier, but Carboy, if he doesn't want a bingo, is also a lot of points. And Will being so many points down might actually, and one blank already been played, and he has the other one, might even be willing to make a 39-point play first and then get a bingo the next turn. It's definitely in the cards.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what Will does. Will is the type of player, too, who will play a phony. His word knowledge is so good, and sometimes he'll play it off like, oh, I wasn't sure, but I know Will better than that. I know Will knows when phonies are good. So as the chat is indicating, I wonder if he's going to try Bacteric just to try to score a little bit more and squeeze a few points out of Eric. It is extremely hard to challenge in this tournament, because if Eric challenges and is wrong, the word Will plays is good, he loses a turn. And that's one way for Will to get right back in this game, is to bingo and then get to go right again afterwards. So I wonder if he pulls a trigger on Bacteric to try to squeeze some extra points out of this. He's certainly thinking about it right now. Cool thoughts by the chat, definitely. And we'll definitely see what he does, and we'll see if Eric is able to pull the trigger on a challenge there. Oh, this is an interesting turn.
Yeah, and I think 14 Domino, or Cesar, another great player, says Bacteric is Collins, which is the International Dictionary, which Will also plays. So, as Matt, he could have legitimate dictionary confusion. I know Will is someone who doesn't like to have dictionary confusion mistakes during a tournament, and so part of him might even if he's unsure between the two and thinks he could get away with it, part of him might just not want to set that sort of habit up for himself for this tournament, as if he starts playing someone who would be pretty sure of if Bacteric is valid or not, he doesn't want to have that be a habit of his potentially. So I think he's probably doing a combo of strategy decision making right now. He could also be thinking about, okay, how sure am I of this? And if I really do want to play Bacteric and think it could be Collins, I just need to make sure I don't have this carefree attitude all the time in the tournament.
And yet, when you're losing by several points, you need to take some chances to try to get into a game. But then maybe you don't. You're sitting on a blank. You're about to bingo. Maybe you just need to stay calm, wait for that S. Maybe you hit the Screeks spot eventually. Definitely some thinking to do for Will. I wonder what he's going to do.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of decision making here, and the precise score update is 234 to 92 if the players have scored their plays all correctly. But it looks like Will is now putting down Bacteric, a word not in the NWL dictionary that they're playing, but in the International Dictionary. Will does play both dictionaries. Eric, I don't think, plays both, but Bacteric is such a low probability word, and most experts study words in probability order. But once you have two C's in a rack, a B, etc., it becomes really, really tough to get to that part of the 8-letter word section in your word knowledge study. So it looks like Eric briefly held, but it looks like he's now nodding. Will's now nodding, so I think Will's about to draw tiles. Yeah.
All right, so these could be courtesy tiles, but I think given that exchange and the cordiality, the play was probably accepted. And so it looks like Will is going to sneak by a phony word, at least in this lexicon, and score some extra points out of it. So Will took his shot. What's fun is now we get to think about, is anybody going to try to put an S behind that? It's a word that doesn't seem like it would take an S, but it's already not a word. So is somebody going to try it? And we might see later on in the game if someone gets desperate, that is an option for him.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see what Eric does here. I mean, he's now up only 50 points even after scoring so all these past few turns. I mean, Will got a 42-point play after Wadi, now a 92-point play after Bacteric. So I think he does the smart play here of playing QI for 21. The other letters in that rack are just so good, and he could draw into something like Eternize through the E in Bacteric.
Yeah, he's not going to do it there. One thought that popped into my head was considering holding onto the Q just because of the spot next to Shimmed, where you can drop Qua brainlessly for like 40 points. But there's no real spot to score other stuff, and the Q is such a bad tile if you don't have a U to go with it. That's got to be the right thing to do for Eric.
Yeah, I think basically every play, maybe aside from Oi, which was just a really tough decision in general, is kind of, they're finding the best moves here, absolutely. And I think every move that's been played here can at least be argued as the best move.
Definitely. The way the Nationals are paired, for those more unfamiliar with this tournament, the first 3 rounds are predetermined by pairs. After that, rounds 4 through 31 are all determined based on the standing. So people near the top play other people near the top, people near the bottom play other people near the bottom. But the first 3 rounds, they cut the tournament into 4 quadrants. So Will is representing quadrant 1, and his first 3 games are coming against someone from the bottom quadrant, the third quadrant, and then the second quadrant. Traditionally, for the top players, for the top seeds, you're playing somebody who's lower rated, usually 14 or 1500 in round 1, who's decided to play up in Division 1 because they want to play with the experts. But it's supposed to be one of your easier matchups, and Eric has been playing some really great Scrabble. So Will, I'm sure, is acutely aware of the fact that he is not getting what he was hoping would be a cakewalk matchup in this game, and Eric is definitely going to make this tough for him.
Yeah, so Will opts for dot, which probably is close to the top equity play. Equity is often what players use to say combo of best score and leave without any board dynamics consideration or like letters in the bag consideration. So he takes some time because there isn't a clear amazing play. A 23-point play is good, but you always want to look for better. And Eric right away, though, that gave him a very nice play of Z, which he played right away.
I'm pretty sure Eric was going to play Z in that spot anyway on that turn, and so he was happy to be like, well, there's 5 extra points to do exactly what I was going to do anyway.
Yeah, and Will has drawn a bingo, anti-riot, to the T in Bacteria. So he should be able to spot that. That will open up the board so much when it was starting to get closed down. You can sort of see one half of the board hasn't been used at all, and anti-riot would just completely open up that half of the board.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm trying to see what that would give Eric back, but I am so rusty. Is Negatron good?
I think that should be good.
So then, if Will plays anti-riot, is Eric gonna triple back on him with Negatron?
Oh my God!
Game over. All right.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a test for Eric right now. Will he see Negatron? It is one of those words.
Here it comes.
We'll see. We'll see. So it's one of those words that, if you've studied it, even in a tournament like this, you need to like triple check to make sure this is the word, right? It's not. I'm not just thinking of like Calvin Johnson Megatron sort of thing. So Negatron. It's a word that he has almost definitely studied, but it's a word where over the board you just need to make sure in your head, this is the word I've studied.
Right. There's so many other words similar to it: tetragon, estragon, obviously Megatron in common vernacular. But here it comes, Negatron, and that is just devastating. You can see Will is not happy. He's just kind of nodding along, like, of course this happens to me round 1 at the Nationals. That's going to be really, really tough for Will to come back.
Yeah, I mean, it basically makes it a 150-point game again, but with fewer tiles in the bag, including no more blanks. So, and a lot of the best scoring spots already taken out. So, even though he basically clawed back from a 150-point lead already once, it's harder to do at this point in the game.
That's Scrabble for you, though. Anti-riot, obviously the correct thing to do on that turn. You have no other options, and then to immediately get smacked with a 130-point play is just not fun. Morris, for the viewers at home, I know our score widget is still not working correctly. What is the score right now? Do you have that?
I'm entering in the past few plays now. They've been coming down quickly, but it looks like it is 423 to 275.
So Eric already has 423 points, and we're at like the halfway point in this game. Eric might drop a 600 on Will.
Yeah, and if you're Will here, I mean, the highest scoring play, I think, or best equity, would be something like AXE above the TIR in Anti-Riot. He might go for something just like AXE in the top left corner, creating X and NA instead. Well, it looks like he's going for the higher point one, or not the higher point one, but the one that keeps only one E instead of two E's. I mean, at this point in the game, he might be throwing in the towel to some extent, but I might have kept those bingo lanes open.
Yeah, I think this could be Will just throwing in the towel. Not necessarily. There are still some bingo lines available, but I think doubling down from that R is the last realistic option for Will to get back into the game. That'd be an eight letter bingo down from the R, hitting 2 double words at once, getting a 4 times bonus. And that's gone now, more or less. But at a certain point, the point spread or the differential does matter, especially in a tournament like Nationals. It's the tiebreaker between people with similar records. And at a certain point, you do just need to say, hey, this one's not my game. I'm just going to try to keep it as close as possible and move on. So in a way, maybe that's what Axe was. Definitely the way to do that, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's always tough. Like when when the game is so out of hands at a certain point, and not because of bad play, but just because your opponent was getting the right stuff at the right times, it can be hard to just use much more brain power and think about things really intensely. Um, yeah, you might just want to start moving your energy to the next 6 games, which definitely takes a lot of energy.
One thing I have seen is that one play of Oi by Eric was a very interesting one. It said, "Hey, I've got a lead," and I thought it was a rather strange play that to me was a little bit too much on the defensive side. So if I was Will, I think I would have tried to capitalize on that. I would have dropped AX or EX underneath the Y and Waddy, left that R line open, and hoped to get back in this game by watching Eric score a little bit less than he could to try to close bingo lines turn after turn while I try to score a little bit more and then hit one of the lines that he's not able to block in time. But
Yeah.
that's not Will's game. Eric has now drawn Lindy's on his rack, and it doesn't look like it goes on a shutdown board, but Will's probably got to open the board. Eric could try it with Bacterix as well, but with a lead like this, I don't think you pull the trigger on that. And Will has drawn back into UV the second time he's pulled a U and a V concurrently this game. As we mentioned earlier, that is not what you like to see in Scrabble. Super anti-synergy, bad letter combinations. So I don't know that there's much left for Will to do in this game. Whether he tries
He's
to go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think he's finding Envoy now, which is a great way to open the board and doesn't give Eric any bingo opportunities. So that scores pretty well, given his options on the board. And, he's within 100 points now. It's unlikely he wins with only, I think it's less than 15 tiles in the bag at this point, or maybe exactly 15. But it could be possible if Eric does continue to play conservatively and will plays for points. If he pulls a miracle bingo, he could maybe pull it out, but we'll see.
It doesn't look like Will's pulled the bingo, at least not that I see.
Yeah, not right away, but it those are definitely like the starting kind of tiles that if you get rid of one or two of them, you could have a bingo next turn. Granted, they're all low point tiles as a result, and so he might not be able to score a lot this coming turn, which might be necessary for him to make up an 100-point deficit. But yeah, he definitely could get a bingo before the end of the game.
What's the score right now, Morris?
So I think it's 440 to 343 in favor of Eric, and it is Eric's turn as well.
All right, so it's about 100-point game. It's Eric's turn, and Will's not going to bingo. If you're Will, you probably need 2 bingos now to get back into this game, and you're just starting to run out of time in terms of what you can do. The bag is getting emptier and emptier. You're going to have to play all 7 of your letters, draw 7 fresh letters, and then bingo again with those. And really, unless that happens on Will's next 2 turns, he's not going to be winning this game.
Yeah, in the meantime, Eric looks like he's going to play short. He separated ID or LID from the rest of his tiles, so I think he'll likely try to play off just 2 or 3 tiles, keeping really synergistic letters. At this point, it seems like a solid enough move. I mean, even with Envoy, there aren't that many high scoring spots, and if Will does get that miraculous bingo from Envoy, it will open a triple word score where Eric can likely have a response play that puts him right back in the driver's seat, given the cushion he already has.
I will say, with what Eric has, he's not going to be able to punish that triple word square back very effectively. But Eric has some time to change that. It will be interesting to see if he makes a short little play and tries to keep very synergistic and bingo prone letters, or if he decides to go a little bit longer and just make the game end, maybe block some bingo lines. Yeah, that's a pretty solid play. It takes out any overlapping bingo opportunities next to Negatron. It also eliminates this bacteric hook that, like, he probably assumes is not a word, but doesn't want to see it come down anyway. And it is actually kind of hard to bingo on top of Envoy because many bingos end in the letter S, but SE is not valid, so you can't bingo there unless you end in other tiles like an R or a D.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I always look for in those sorts of plays is, am I giving back anything crazy on the triple? The J is still available, so I would need to make sure there was no big J play, six-letter J play that could be available. I don't see anything right away, but yeah, there could always be those freak things, and it's easy to forget that when you're so determined to close down all bingo lines. You could give back a 60 or 70 point non bingo without realizing it.
Right, something like Tajine, Tajine, would have hurt a lot, but it won't hurt so bad that he's going to lose the game. He can survive it. Um, Yeah, so just Eric has drawn now the J and the last S. Many players kind of assess luck very, very crudely through the power tiles. There are 10 power tiles in Scrabble, 2 blanks, 4 S's, J, Q, X, and Z. And for those keeping score at home, Eric now has drawn all 4 of the S's. He has drawn a blank, he's drawn a Z, a Q, and a J. So that left Will with just an X and a blank, and he capitalized with those as best as he could, probably. But it is tough to win a game when you don't get the stuff. And that's not a knock on Eric by any means. Eric has played some really solid Scrabble as well. Sometimes you get the stuff, and a big part of the Nationals is when you do get the stuff, you've got to make sure you win those games. So Eric's done a great job. And it looks like Will's going to give one last shot. Maybe he's just going to do a one tile fish. Yeah, he just drops the letter L. He's going to see what kind of stuff he can pull after that. I think he might be fishing for an E to hit like urinate, making oft and ORE underneath frumps. Eric immediately responds back by plunking the J down for 25, holding really nice stuff. So each player now is trying to bingo. Will picks up an A into his fish, which I don't think is going to do anything for him. Eric picks up an E into his fish, which is not going to do anything for him. And so now we're just going to sit here, I think, as each player watches and waits for the other one to bingo, and neither one's going to happen. But ultimately, this game is more or less done at this point. And it's just how many points is Eric going to score? What's the overall spread going to be? And does one of these players get a meaningless bingo at the end of the game to cut the spread?
Yeah, and to go back to a point earlier of like, it's no knock to Eric, keep in mind, some words like shimmed, I don't think on stream I would have pulled the trigger on that, and that's clearly the best bingo. So sometimes when these games look so lopsided and look so clear, well, that's only if you have the cheat codes right in front of you, and it's really hard in these sorts of situations to make games look as easy as Eric made this game look.
Yeah, again, you never know what's going to happen next turn, and you have to make the best. Like, Rick can't know after shimmed, hey, I'm going to draw the rest of the S's and I'm going to hit a triple triple. But he did make the best play there. He was able to squeeze extra points out of his rack, and it is always super important to take those opportunities and capitalize on them. So great job by Eric. Great game by Eric. No fault to Will. I don't think he did really anything bad. I think Bacteric was a really clever and creative play. It will be interesting, and maybe somebody can try to follow up with him later. Did he think it was a word? But if you ask him that, I guarantee you he's going to say, oh, yeah, I thought it was good, just to play the humility card. I bet Will knew. Will is a boss.
Yeah, and so I will say though he missed an even higher point play for dumping his A, so he played KA and AH for 11. He could have played Ray Z, connecting Z with an R for a few
Oh,
more, but small nitpicking at this point. And he
I
drew to
take back.
Puritan.
Yes, I take back the nice things I said about Will. After missing Ray Z for additional points, he is clearly the worst player I've ever seen. That is entirely sarcasm. Will is still a great player. And he does have Puritan, so that'll make the game more interesting. Morris, give us a score update.
Yeah, so it's right now 477 to 367, so that's a 110-point lead in favor of Eric. There are also 8 tiles in the bag, so even with Puritan, will be down by 50-ish, maybe slightly more, and at that point the bag will be exhausted. Assuming Eric plays at least 1 tile here, by Will playing 7 tiles the next turn, the bag will be empty in 2 turns.
And Morris, for those people joining us more recently on this stream, tell us what we're watching. Tell us where we're at.
So yeah, I mean, in Scrabble, the beginning of the game, normally you kind of just start making plays that score a bunch, maybe keep some good letter combinations too to score well the next turn. At this point in the game, when you have more information about what's been played, you also have more information about what hasn't been played. And so it goes closer and closer to being a non-random game, to basically knowing what your opponent could have and what possibilities remain. Eric sees with an 110-point lead and given the shape of the board that Will can't really do much to dent his lead down enough to actually steal the game from him. So Eric, still wants to make the right play here, but he's in a fairly safe position as Scrabble games go.
25.
And so right now, Eric is shuffling his tiles a bit, still considering a few options. He has all 1-point letters, which sometimes makes it hard, just because there isn't a clear letter you want to necessarily get rid of or want to keep. So he's going to be considering a few things this turn. He has C set up right now. I'm guessing that goes next to Dote, so making Ids, Ho, and Utah. All valid 3-letter words in Scrabble, but he could be looking at something else shortly.
Yeah, I would just play SAE or SEE right there, depending on what tiles are unseen. At this point, again, though, it doesn't particularly matter what goes on. This game is over. The Will is going to hit Puritan, cut the spread down, and make what could have been a very ugly loss turn into probably just about a 60-point loss. We'll see what Eric draws and if he bingos back after Puritan, but I would guess with that leave, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't look too likely, but we'll see, I guess, what the 3 tiles are.
41.
We are aware of some of the issues with the stream. We may be dropping just temporarily between rounds 1 and 2 to try to get our score widget fixed and to address a little bit of the lag between the commentators and the stream. Thanks for your patience as we got through this, everybody. And keep us posted. If there are more issues, drop them in the chat. We're reading it actively, and we'll do our best to address them.
Yeah, so Will is now setting up Puritan, and he's going to place it down. And that will get him down only by 61. So it's right now 502 to 441 in the game. And that will empty the bag as well.
Yes, as the chat mentioned, this is a moral victory for Will. Cut the spread. Get the bingo down.
Yeah, it's he did what he could. He milked as many points as he could out of the bingo he got down of bacteric, which is valid in the international dictionary, but not in the dictionary they're playing here. And he got a bingo right after that in Anti-Riot to come within 20 points, but Eric just happened to have the perfect counterplay of 7 letters to Anti-Riot. So some games you win, some games you lose. The other 50% where either player can win. That's what really determines if you're going to be a national champion or just in the middle of the pack.
Absolutely. I just received word we will be dropping the stream to try to resolve some of the issues. It should be a very temporary thing. So for those of you watching at home, stay tuned. We will be right back. We should see all of game 2. You're not going to miss any of the action. So there's our warning, and just stay tuned.
Yeah. So we have a lot of games this tournament. Obviously, there's some startup costs, and we should, in the next few days, have some really, really great, crisp Scrabble. Hopefully, some games that don't involve triples that basically make them only moral victories for people like Will. But it will be a lot of great competitive Scrabble soon.
I see in the chat, yeah, Will's going to drop to 0-1. Will, again, the favorite to win this tournament. He's won nationals before, but will be starting 0-1, which makes things very interesting. Of course, 31-game tournament, anything can happen, but 0-1 is certainly not what Will was hoping to start this tournament as. He is probably fortunate, though, definitely fortunate that Puritan blocked agonism as Eric has it set up on his rack, and Eric's not going to be able to pull that bingo now, so that helps.
Yeah, I guess, is he gonna look for something like Mops here off of the P and Puritan? That's looking close to the highest scoring play, if I had to guess.
Mops or Gimps or just something along that line. Probably just hit that spot. He needs to think about the right way to play an endgame in Scrabble is to figure out what letters your opponent has. Figure out if your opponent is going to be able to go out with those letters and end the game. The game ends when one player runs out of letters, and you'd like to be that player in almost any instance for spread purposes. So he's trying to see if Will has acceptable outplays, if he's able to block all of those outplays, and or if he should just try to score as much as he can and kind of resign himself to the fact that Will's going to make the first or the last play of the game. I'm not seeing an out for Will next turn, but I'm also very, very shaky. All I see is Fetal on his rack with no spot.
Yeah, I don't see anything right away either. And we were asked for a score update. Eric is right now up, if they scored every play correctly, 502 to 441. And so, yeah, he got down the triple of Negatron earlier in the game to really lock up the game. And it looks like he is now, at least considering Mops.
Yeah, he's down to 20 seconds too, so at a certain point it does just become, hey, you got to make a play. You can't run over time. For those of you at home who aren't so familiar with Tournament Scrabble, you are allowed to go over time. It is not an instantaneous loss like in chess, but you do lose 10 points off of your game score for every minute or part of a minute that you go overtime. So Eric would like to avoid that. 10 points is, just a slap on the wrist in a game like this, but still, and this one's more or less over now.
Yeah, and Will, being the good player he is, he has 5 minutes. He might just want to. I mean, it's a no pressure endgame solving. Like when you're down by so much, and you're gonna lose, you can just say, you know what? Why don't I just have some fun and just see if I could find the best play just for my own, warm up for the next game on. So he does find Aleph, which is the best end game response. So good on him. And Eric is now down to his last few seconds. Will he be able to find AGIN parallel to Delhi, making 2 3-letter words and 2 2-letter words? That's the question.